A bromance cultivated by a shared passion for violence, an escape from a maximum security prison deemed a fortress and a legacy etched in stone as the last men to meet their maker at the hands of a state-sanctioned executioner. This is the story of Zimbabwe's most notorious crime duo, Stephen Chijimo and Edgar Mazandik. In the criminal underworld, there are two delinquents. You have the career criminals, those who disregard the law for financial gratification, and on the other side of the coin, you have the criminally insane. These are the types of individuals that commit heinous crimes purely for their own satisfaction. Well, the two gentlemen we are about to discuss fall into the second tier of delinquents driven to crime purely for the pleasure. Stephen and Edgar alongside two other accomplices were the only known inmates to ever escape Zimbabwe's most infamous prison known as Chikurubi. Their names became the stuff of legends, and their inexplicable ability to evade law enforcement drove the masses to believe they had acquired supernatural powers through black magic rituals. Before we dive into today's story, I would like to remind you that over 90% of my viewers haven't subscribed. If you are one of them and you are watching this, please do the right thing and hit that subscribe button. Now let's get back to the story. Stephen and Edgar met in the early 90s when both men were serving short prison stints in Mutamurfu remand prison. Stephen had already been making waves, racking up an extensive rap sheet. At the time, Stephen was doing a 4-year bid after being found guilty of grand theft auto. This is when his rise to fame would take shape, when he was able to pull off his first ever escape from prison, that he somehow managed to slip his handcuffs whilst being transported to another high-level facility due to the severity of his crimes. His escape left the public so baffled that whispers of voodoo or black magic supernatural powers began to make the rounds. People believed that Stephen had acquired supernatural powers from a shaman in Mozambique. As absurd as it may sound, the masses believed he had the ability to shape-shift, taking on the form of insects or animals in order to evade law enforcement. The aftermath of his escape sent shockwaves nationwide when he embarked on a month-long crime spree. As if to mock law enforcement, he returned to his prudent ways, committing a string of armed robberies. Stephen Chijimo's newfound freedom would be short-lived, as he would be apprehended in Bulawayo in 1994. He didn't disappoint, as he lived up to his reputation of being a magnificent escape artist only 1 year into his capture. Edgar Mazandik wasn't far behind in notoriety either. He too was terrorizing the city of Bulawayo. Edgar was known to be a brazen robber, mainly targeting the cash-liquid Indian retail stores. Edgar had meticulously worked his way up the criminal underworld. He had started off as a pickpocket thief who preferred to operate in the shadows, remaining inconspicuous and never drawing attention to himself or his deeds. This all changed in 1992 when he rekindled his friendship with a childhood associate who worked as a security guard. Edgar and his friend agreed upon a mutually beneficial arrangement in which he would get first-hand intel on the operations of the chain retail stores. It quickly prompted Edgar to up the stakes by sourcing firearms and orchestrating several high-stakes robberies which were extremely violent in nature. He would leave his victims severely beaten, gagged, and bound. This is how Edgar acquired his sadistic reputation. Now that both men had an extensive rap sheet, spanning years of crime, they both found themselves locked up in Zimbabwe's maximum security prison. Categorized by its strict stuff and unbearable living conditions, designed to break the spirit of any delinquent, Chikurubi prison is nothing short of hell on earth. Surprisingly enough, both men gravitated towards each other. Rumor has it that they had become fanboys of each other's crimes, and when they were presented with the opportunity to share trade secrets, they didn't hesitate. The pair would often be seen playing checkers or card games, embroiled in deep discussions. Little did the guards know, the two's bromance would encourage them to do the impossible. The two had hatched a plan to defeat the prison's security protocols, but their plan required more manpower than just the two of them. Stephen and Edgar decided to bring on board 2 more accomplices to aid them in executing the only prison escape from the hell-like fortress. In August 1997, they set their plan in motion, aided by a former soldier-turned-convict Pedzisai Muzarairi and career criminal Elias Chalk. The 4-man lured 2 guards to their cell before physically overpowering them and gaining control of a set of keys that granted them access to the prison's main entrance gate. 2 convicts masqueraded as guards and walked with the other 2 accomplices straight out the gate, claiming they had chores to complete in the surrounding farmlands. This wasn't unusual, as most inmates would take turns plowing and cultivating the nearby farmland under the watchful eye of armed prison guards. The 4 inmates' plan went off without a hitch, and that gave them a cushy head start to outrun law enforcement. Splitting up seemed like the best strategy to evade capture. They would all go their separate ways, with Stephen and Edgar agreeing to rendezvous in the city of Mutare, which is a stone's throw from neighboring Mozambique. Stephen felt comfortable in Mutare since he had spent the better part of his childhood there, so he understood the lay of the land. He also had relatives, but it was certain they wouldn't welcome him with open arms. However, this did not deter the duo from making short-term living arrangements whilst on the run. The two had concocted a sinister plan to neutralize Stephen's relatives. With law enforcement nibbling at their heels, the 2 men quickly realized they would need to make a quick buck. They would rob Stephen's uncle and wife of all valuables in their rural homestead and sell them to diamond merchants who are always willing to drop ridiculous amounts of cash on anything they deemed valuable, no questions asked. The 2 men beat up and gagged Stephen's uncle along with his wife before proceeding to prepare themselves a meal. The Zimbabwe Republic Police was hot on their tail, accompanied by a highly trained paramilitary faction ready to unleash hell on anyone who dared make trouble. When the police arrived at the homestead, all they found was the badly beaten man along with his wife. Surprisingly, the plates the 2 escapees had eaten from were still warm, indicating they were close by. However, despite the perimeter set by the cops, the 2 men managed to vanish without a trace, sparking rumors that they had shape-shifted into animals and managed to evade capture. These whispers trickled into the ears of the masses, and no one felt safe. But their luck would be short-lived, as Edgar couldn't resist the urge to sneak back into the country and pull off some more robberies. He was apprehended after a tip-off by patrons of a local pub where he would be seen scouting potential victims. He had stolen a vehicle at gunpoint, but little did he know, he was driving straight into a military checkpoint. Stephen would panic, realizing his partner hadn't returned in weeks, and he too would sneak back into the Zimbabwe from Mozambique to find his accomplice. Exactly 29 days after his comrade's capture, he too would suffer the same fate. Both men were scheduled to meet their maker on the 31st of May, 2002. They lived together, ate together, committed heinous crimes together, and finally, they died together by the noose of the hangman. Just like that, their names were urged in history as the only men to ever escape Chikurubi prison. Thank you for watching.